Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. My goal with each video is to answer some of the most commonly asked questions in real estate. And so there's one that's been popping up a lot in the last couple of months. So I thought I would take this opportunity to hook up with my friend Michael Zuber, author of One Rental at a Time, and see, since he also tries to help people reach financial freedom, if he's been seeing this question and what his answer was. So, Mike, thanks for being here with me today.
Absolutely, Dion. This is a very common question. I'm glad we're talking about it. I don't talk about it nearly enough.
Cool. So the question is, in a market that's hot like the one that we're seeing in 2021, really far to the seller's side of things, if a person doesn't own any properties yet, what should they focus on first? The house they're going to live in or investment properties? So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, it's my opinion might surprise a lot of people, right? As the author of One Rental at a Time, I think a lot of people look at me and go, "Hey, he's the investment house guy." Well, that's kind of a surface understanding of my story, right? My story really starts and it's built upon the fact that my parents, who both served in the military, got a loan from veterans, right? A VA loan to get a house in the 70s in Sunnyvale, California. And it was only because of that house we were able to survive some really hard financial times. So my answer for most people is do what you can to get on the property ladder. It is generally speaking easier to get on the property ladder via an owner-occupied loan, lower down payment, better interest rates, the ability to house hack, the ability to buy a fourplex. There's lots of ways to do it. There are a couple of caveats, right? If you are in a spot or a area of the country and your intention is not to live there more than 2 or 3 years, and it would ultimately be a negative cash flow property should you turn it into a rental when you left, don't buy, right? I am not the guy that's going to sit here that says, hey, I'm going to make it up on appreciation. I live in California. We have some of the most wild swings in real estate. I have seen appreciation help, and I have seen appreciation crush, right, when it goes the other direction. So for most people, I do think the answer is focus on your owner occ. It's just the easiest way. It's the lowest down payment, the best interest rates. You have some very creative and powerful ways being taught by guys like you, Dion, like house hacking, which is not talked about enough. It doesn't have to be your forever home day one, right? The first house you buy is very rarely going to be your forever home. So buy it with the lens of, you know what? I am going to live here for a year, a 2, 4, 5 years, and then it will become a rental. And let's not forget, there are other ways that you can leverage owner occupied to really build wealth. One that is, again, not talked about enough is, the tax code hasn't changed yet. If you're single, it's $250K. If you're married, it's $500K. If you live in your primary residence for 2 years, you can take all of that gain tax-free. Right? So there's a lot of ways to build wealth when you do it on purpose with an owner-occupied home. So again, I think for most people, the right answer in most markets, most of the time is focus on your primary.
So you're right. That's probably not what a lot of people were expecting you to say. They're thinking the one rental at a time doesn't say one house at a time. It's one rental at a time. Taking house hacking out of it, because anybody who's familiar with my content is going to know that my answer would be, well, of course you'd buy them both at the same time. Everything that you buy can be house hacked in some way. And you get the benefits of low money down, better interest rate. But in a market that's hot like this, if you have the ability to save the down payment, I think people, because it's how I did it, could benefit from buying the rental first.
Okay.
Getting rental income on your tax returns as soon as possible helps offset your debt to income as you grow a portfolio when you're first starting out. Once you're into commercial loans and you have 10 in your name, then it really doesn't matter which way you go. But when you buy your house, that impacts your debt in your debt to income.
For sure.
When you have rental properties, that rental income, once it's reported on your tax returns, and the lenders I work with also require at least 3 months remaining on leases for that rental income to count on my debt to income as the income side. Those numbers are huge. When you start looking at a fourplex, that monthly payment, even if you have a pretty decent salary, might be more than your debt to income can allow. But if you've had a rental for a couple of years, even while you're renting, and you go to buy a fourplex and there's 3 months remaining on your leases, lenders may look at that fourplex and say the income on the property that you're buying, don't even own yet, that can count in your income. So you can scale a little bit easier. I'm a little bit torn because, of course, I'm going to want to bring in house hacking. But that's not always an option for a lot of people. A lot of times, especially when it's a couple, and sometimes both people in that relationship aren't both wanting rentals, let alone house hacking.
Yeah.
I think you have a really good point. Getting on the property ladder is you start building equity. You start, you're paying down the principal. And Mike, I'm always really careful to make sure that we don't let the tax tail wag the dog. Nobody should be spending money in order to get a tax break. But anytime that we spend money and we have the opportunity to take a tax break, we want to make sure that we do it. And when you buy your primary house, you don't get as many tax advantages as when you buy an investment property. Yes, you get to write off the interest on the mortgage, but with an investment property, you get to write off every expense. So for me, that kind of puts me a little bit more towards the buying an investment property before I buy a primary house. A couple of other things to consider is, guys our age, Mike, we're used to working at a company for years. You were in the same industry, worked at one company for years. I drove for the same company one time for 12 years. Millennials, younger generations, are staying at a company 1 to 3 years and then changing jobs more often than our generation did, which ironically is making them earn more money, because when you stay at one company, you get slow raises over time. When you change companies, you actually get brought up to a better wage faster, usually. At least that's what a lot of the data that I'm seeing says. So when you buy a house, you're kind of tied to an area. And yes, you can turn your house into a rental, but if it wasn't purchased with that intent, it might not cash flow the way you need it to. When you buy a rental, it's very easy to hire a property management company and move to the next town, follow the next job. And the second thing is, when you buy a rental, if it's purchased right and you don't get an alligator, you're going to add cash flow to your savings rate, making saving for the next purchase easier and faster. Then there's also the idea of complacency. Sometimes a lot of home buyers think, eventually I'll get into real estate investing. And the more we put it off, the further down the road that goes. We all think, I'm going to buy a rental property. But not today. When you buy the first one, that's when you develop the skills to realize how easy the process is to duplicate, and getting the next one, and the next one gets easier and easier, because we say this all the time. The first time you do anything in real estate, it's pretty scary. The second time, it almost feels like you could teach a class. But I think depending on the person's situation, they should talk to somebody that is, in a position maybe like you or me, Mike, where we can actually give some advice on, here's what I think you should do from your position, because it is almost on a case-by-case basis going to be completely different, depending on things like you said, are they going to move in 2 or 3 years? That completely impacts whether they should buy the house or not, because gambling on appreciation is
no bueno.
Hoping. No bueno. And you don't want to get caught living on hopium. All right. That was nice, short and sweet and simple. I appreciate your insight on that. Still looking forward to us doing a deal deep dive one of these days. I think what I'd like to do when we talk about that is your best deal and your worst deal in a 10-minute window, to see if you can fit all of that data in there.
Happy to.
Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.